All right, noting the hour and the presence of a quorum, I'll call the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee to order. Welcome back, everybody. Happy New Year. Hope you had a restful break and are ready to dive headfirst into a packed meeting. So, members of the public who wish to watch our meeting online may do so on ActonTV's YouTube channel, which is found at the top of our agenda. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on ActonTV's website at actontv.org. Again, I want to apologize. We do have a very packed agenda this evening. There's a lot to discuss as we're making our way into budget season this year. First item for us is the ABRHS student representative updates. Welcome to our student reps. I see a number of you here. Please step forward. Make sure the microphone's turned on if you have any updates to give. There's a switch on there you need to push up. There you go.
All right, are we good? All right. Hi, I'm Julia Zhou. I'm a sophomore at the high school. And the update I'd like to give today is about a potential shift or addition to our curriculum. So I've noticed, as well as my other representatives, we know that social justice is really important to the high school students. And we've seen a lot of success with justice-related courses, like understanding race and others that we currently have. And so we believe that it'd be a great idea to either add more focus on women and non-male people in our history and English curriculums. We think it would provide to a really great discussion within the student body. And we believe that if energy and supplies were available, it would be great if we could add a women's studies course to our curriculum as an elective that the students could take. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. Nothing from Molly, Diksha? No? All right. Thank you, Julia. Next item is our public participation. Per our school committee policy, members of the public are invited to speak for up to 3 minutes. We will dedicate a maximum of 20 minutes to public participation. Speakers must be recognized by the chair before speaking, and as a reminder, the committee does not typically respond to comments during public participation. Any members of the public wish to make comments? Come forward, please.
Hi, I'm Alex Hua, and I'm a junior. I'm here as a member of Resource Force, a student-led environmental team at ABRHS, here in support of the climate resolution. So that climate resolution we sent last June to the school committee, and climate change is an existential threat that we think has to be dealt with immediately, and progress towards decarbonizing the school district should start as soon as possible, and we'd like to see the school committee taking active steps to ensure that happens. We acknowledge that the school committee is understandably concerned about the budget crisis, but our resolution does not demand any capital investments right now, and instead contains capital investments spread over multiple decades. And these are necessary long-term improvements, and there's no better time than now to make them, because as a result of federal legislation, there are billions of dollars of tax credits, grants, and other incentives available that have not been available in the past. And these are the biggest federal investments in climate change in history, and so the school committee has to take advantage of them and make sure that we are on track to become net zero and carbon neutral.
Hi, I'm Tanesh. I'm a junior at Acton-Boxborough Regional High School. I'm also a member of Resource Force, the student-led team, environmental team, and I'm also here in support of the climate resolution. The AB Regional School District is a key part of the fight for climate change, and it's the largest contributor of greenhouse gas emissions and within the municipality. And in fact, the schools alone produce 12,722 metric tons of CO2 equivalent, according to the Acton greenhouse gas inventory in 2017, and that's a staggering amount of emissions, and it's the largest compared to other public sectors in Acton and Boxborough. And the school district is a visible part of our community, and and has a great responsibility to combat climate change. And it has to make a real difference right here and right now in this fight against climate change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Gary Kushner, Boxborough Finance Committee. So one of the things I'm here for is to talk about your policy of not allowing questions during the session. I've talked about this before. I think it's a mistake. I understand you're trying to cut back on scheduling and time, but it impacts the Finance Committee members, possibly other members who do have questions that can't come up during an early review of your slides as things are discussed. So I'd like to have you, again, take another look at that policy. I have a couple questions. One, just to my previous two students, it's nice of them to get up here and talk, but maybe they don't know that the school committee is already supporting climate change. You know, we built a brand new school, twin school over in Gates and Douglas, net zero energy, if we ever get the Board of Health in Acton to approve the system that we need. So I'd hope that the students are also going to the Board of Health meetings to represent the school in the region and getting the new battery system up so we can go net zero energy. We are net zero water. I have seen a note that there's talk of a school budget review on Saturday, February 3rd. If that date stays, that's a problem. Boxborough has our capital Saturday that day, which means nobody from Boxborough would be able to attend. It's in the morning. Maybe you could do in the afternoon, or if not, you're not going to have Boxborough representation. And in the audit report, I noticed the current assets dropped by over 50%. I think I saw a note saying that that's because of the funds going into the Boardwalk campus of about $17 million. I just want to make sure during somebody's discussion that maybe during the asset report itself, you can verify that that's where the funds dropped from 35 down to 17 million. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Any other public comment? All right, seeing none, we are going to push the superintendent's update till after our guests provide their presentations. So our first guest presenter this evening is Jason Tait from the Massachusetts Office of Campaign Finance. As a precursor, Jason, please come up, have a seat. You can leave that mic there. Actually, there's one on the table like this. I sent in a message out to both the Acton Finance Committee and Select Board to let them know of this training as well. As we're moving towards an override in the town of Acton, I wanted to make sure that all of the public officials who have both access to public funds or resources, but also may be involved in some way advocating for or against a ballot vote, that they're very clear in terms of what the roles and responsibilities and regulations and requirements are with regards to that. We had a wonderful training on this, I want to say about 5 or 6 years ago when we had the override or the exclusion, debt exclusion vote for our new school, and so I felt that it would be important to have everybody sort of refreshed on all of that information again. So with that, Jason, welcome. Take it away. And if you just push the button on that microphone so that it lights up red,
all right,
then your mic
it's
will be
red.
on. Perfect.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm the Education Director at the Office of Campaign and Political Finance. We're at 1 Ashburton Place. It's the 21-story building right next to the State House, full of state employees like myself. And I've been there since 2008. And shortly after taking that job, it didn't take long for the director at that time to say, Jason, you're doing all trainings for ballot questions, because no one there likes to do this. And there's a real good reason for that. When you're dealing with candidates, I mean, we've got school committee candidates here, they know the rules. They probably, I hope, know that you can only take $1,000 each year from an individual for your campaigns. No corporate money. That's strictly prohibited in Massachusetts. In ballot question elections, the ballot question committees that are raising and spending money to support or oppose questions, they have some black and white rules, but when it comes to public officials, there are a lot of gray areas, and it's difficult to do trainings, legal trainings, when there are so many gray areas. And so that's why I got stuck with this type of training, and I've been doing it since then. I think I was here 5 years ago for the debt exclusion. And the rules haven't changed. They're the same. And we're going to go through those in what, about 20 minutes or so? Is that about right. I'm just kind of guessing here. I can go for much longer or even shorter, but let's try and keep it within 20.
I'll give you a 5-minute warning.
Thank you. I'll start with just a scenario. So this could be any community. We get calls constantly about ballot questions. I'm just going to kind of put them all together and let you imagine, a school superintendent and his or her team. They've got this ballot question coming up, a tax override. There are reasons why they're asking for that money. And so they spend public resources developing an analysis of why they think that we need this and what would happen if it failed. And they have all sorts of paperwork for that. Well, a select board member in town who has quite a lot of money in their campaign account because they run for office, they say, you know what, I really want this to pass. It's for the kids. And they approach the superintendent and say, hey, you give me the analysis that your public employees put together, I'll run down to the printing company and I'll pay for it using my campaign funds. And then I'll mail it to all the registered voters in Acton. And if there's enough money, I'll get the voter list in Boxborough too, and we'll send it there. Is that okay? These are the kind of scenarios that come up. What would the law say about something like that? That's what we're going to talk about here today. I do have a slideshow for my talking points. By the way, that scenario would be okay. They would, an elected official can use campaign funds to support or oppose a ballot question and can use the materials that were produced by the school department. And those are some of the things we're going to talk about here today. So first, I want to talk about perhaps the most frequent legal issue that our legal department has to deal with, and that's public employees. Our definition of a public employee may be different than definitions found elsewhere in the state statutes. But our definition of a public employee is someone who's appointed and compensated, full-time or part-time. So these are your school teachers, your janitors, people who work for the state prison, police officers, firefighters. These are all appointed and compensated public employees. And there's a very strict rule in Massachusetts that prohibits them from asking for money or receiving money for any political purpose. What does that mean? That means the school teacher we're looking at here on the slideshow, if she's on Facebook and she sees a post from a school committee member saying, hey, we really need this tax override, I hope everyone votes yes on it. There's a ballot question committee formed, and they're raising money. If you want to donate or go to their fundraiser Friday night, please click here. And that school teacher sees that, and she reposts that to Facebook. That is prohibited. She is a public employee, and she can't be involved directly or indirectly in soliciting or receiving campaign contributions, anything for any political purpose. So as public employees get involved, perhaps, in this campaign, they would want to remember that. The handout that I gave you for public employees, public buildings, public resources covers this. Another essential rule, we call these the ground rules, involve public buildings. We're in one right now. Other public buildings include libraries, like the one we're looking at, senior centers, university buildings, community college buildings. When I say university, public university. These are all buildings used for governmental purposes, and fundraising can't happen in these buildings. So if a ballot question committee does form to support or even oppose this ballot question that's coming up, they wouldn't want to have their fundraisers in a government building. Where do committees usually trip up on this? It's when they are sending out invitations. I mean, you can imagine the Vote Yes team is together in the room, and they're sending out invitations, and the person leading the group says, hey, you know what? We forgot to send one to the fire chief. I know that he's behind this. Volunteer number 2, can you send it to the fire chief? Volunteer number 2 thinks fire department and sends the invitation into the fire department building. The courts have determined many, many years ago that that is a prohibited solicitation in a government building. So when ballot question committees form, they should be careful of those sorts of things, sending invitations into government buildings. I can go for like 30 minutes just on these 2 slides that I just went over. I'm going over them quickly so that you have a general idea. I guess the number one thing I could ask, or at least get across, is that you can contact us. We have an email address, ocpf@mass.gov. It's monitored every business day, and we actually respond. So if anything comes up, I ask that you do email our office, and we'll get back to you with advice. So the real reason why I'm here today, it's not for public employees or public buildings, it's for public resources, which generally tend to affect ballot question campaigns. And that's what we're going to get into next. So OCPF, we spend most of our time on public disclosure. There are 2,500 different political committees in Massachusetts organized with us, raising and spending money. Statewide candidates, county candidates, House, Senate, all mayors, city councilors in cities of more than 65,000, political action committees, super PACs, all of these entities are raising and spending money, and our number one goal and mission is for the public disclosure of that activity. And it happens right here on our website. It's ocpf.us. You can find all that public disclosure there. On the local level, our umbrella reaches school committee members, select board members, all local filers also file our forms. In fact, maybe your town clerk's reached out to you already. You have a report due very soon. On the 22nd of January, school committee members have to file a report with the town clerk. We call it the M102. So it's this campaign finance world that we're involved with, and it's all about disclosure. However, there is a sliver of our law that deals with public resources. First off, it starts with a court decision from the 1970s where the city of Boston decided we're going to spend $1 million to support this property tax question. Some taxpayers in town said, that's not fair, that's our money. You can't take our money and then use it to campaign against us. So they went to court, and the court sided with the taxpayers, saying public resources may not be used for campaign purposes. From that court decision, and then a sentence in our campaign finance law, Chapter 55, the second item you see there, and then the implications of Chapter 53, Section 18B, which is not our law, but it's from the elections law. From those three sections of law, we have developed rules for public resources. I'm going to quickly talk about Chapter 53 in a moment. But first, when we talk about the use of public resources, it almost always has to do with distribution, pushing information out to the public. Information that's unsolicited, it's publicly funded, and it has to do with an election. Pushing information out to the public using public resources is prohibited. That's the general rule. So some common applications. A mass mailing. I'm sure the school department has a postage machine. They can't send letters to the whole community saying, please vote yes on this ballot question. Distribution versus via student backpacks. I mean, you can imagine a school principal maybe getting nervous about the upcoming election. They know they need the money for the school department, and so they create a flyer, and they make 1,000 copies, and they give them to the teachers, and they say, teachers, put these in the backpacks of the kids. They can take them home. That's the use of employee time, paper, ink for a political purpose and prohibited. We all have robocall systems to cancel school during the snowstorms. That should not be used to advocate for or against a ballot question. And also a school newsletter. Our legal department has determined that school newsletters that go out electronically or on paper should not address the ballot question issue. And this is the reason why, in part, the Chapter 53 of state law, it's an elections law that's not administered by us, requires a community, the legislative body in a community, to affirm the requirements in this statute to send out information. You can send out unsolicited information to the voters, but only if you adopt the provisions of 18B. That's not our law, so if at any time the legislative body in your towns, they want to adopt this, I recommend that they call the state's elections department. What is permitted? What can public officials do? And when I talk about public officials, for the most part, I'm talking about appointed and compensated public officials. So like superintendents, principals, town managers. They can provide information that's requested by the public. So the school department may have some information on the ballot question. If someone from the public says, hey, can you email that to me? That can be emailed to that person. Another permitted distribution would be a notification of the upcoming election. So the election's coming up. There can be a notification sent to the public saying the time, date, and place of the election. Our legal department has determined that a communication like that is permitted. It's not a long list of permitted distributions because most of them are prohibited. Some permitted actions of public officials. As elected officials, I know most of you are elected officials, there are almost no restrictions on you that I can think of as far as what you can do out in the public to spread the word. Even if you're paid, you're elected, the same as maybe a state rep or a state senator who might be out there pushing for or against one of these statewide ballot questions that are coming out about the MCAS and psychedelics and things like that that are coming out this year. You're elected officials, and you can spread the word, and you can take a stand on things. Permissible actions of appointed officials. Yes.
I was just going to say, it's all appointed, so I want to make sure.
Yes.
What you're saying is not this slide.
That's right. That's for elected officials. For appointed officials, like the superintendent, they can take a position on a ballot question. They can say, yeah, I want this to pass, if asked. If someone asks an appointed official, they can do that. They can prepare materials in the course of their duties, including videos. They can prepare a video and post that to the school website. They can hold public meetings and forums and even advertise them. We ask that if you're going to distribute some sort of advertisement for a public meeting, that you send it to our office, ocpf@mass.gov. We have a team of lawyers there that can give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down or maybe suggest some language changes. It's always good to have that in your hands, just in case you're questioned for it. Local ballot question campaigns, we get so many complaints on these because on one side you have a group that wants to improve schools, and the other side you have a group that maybe, they don't have a lot of money, and they're like, man, I just can't squeeze out any more dollars, and, so they're really concerned about their personal finances, and it can get contentious in a community, so we get a lot of complaints on that. If you were to send us an email, and then we can respond with a thumbs up or a thumbs down, that would help you on your end. Distribute material at forums. If you have a public forum, you can bring that analysis that was prepared, and you can hand it out to the folks who were in attendance at that meeting. And appointed public officials and elected officials, you can work for a ballot question committee. These are political committees that are organized on the local level to raise and spend money to support or oppose questions. You can work for them. Of course, if you're appointed, you can't fundraise, but you can participate in the committee. If you're elected, you can fundraise. At the public meetings, speech is unrestricted. I've gotten this call before. Jason, the superintendent, I was at a public forum, and she was saying that everyone should vote yes on this question because if not, we're going to lose accreditation. That's illegal. No, this is a public meeting. At the public meeting, speech is unrestricted. Distribution of materials at meetings. You can distribute materials at these meetings, like I said before. And the materials can even discuss and advocate for or against a ballot question. However, it should not take the appearance of a campaign flyer. We've all seen the campaign flyers. We get them in the mail every November. It shouldn't take on that appearance. It should be language that explains, if it fails, this would happen. If it passes, this is what would happen, and this is why the school committee and the school administrators believe that voters should vote yes on that. Those sorts of things, those are okay. And material may not be distributed proactively outside the meeting. We put that bullet point in because years ago, it hasn't happened in years, but they would have public meetings, and the materials would be brought to these meetings. 100 people would show up, but they brought 300 stacks, and people would take the other 200 and pass them door to door. We've said, you can't do that. Just material can be distributed at the meeting itself. Equal access. Remember the court case I mentioned from back in the 1970s? The court said that public resources may not be used for campaign purposes. They said unless equal access is granted, and in almost every case, equal access means public property. The school building we're in now, all the fields that we see out here, our office says that these buildings and this property can be used for political purposes, so long as equal access is granted. So if the Vote Yes group is able to go to the boys' basketball game that might be coming up on a Friday night, big game, and they stand outside the gymnasium, maybe where they sell treats, and they have a table set up and some signs that say, vote yes, and this is the reason why, and they have their materials there. It's in a school building on public property, we'd say, that's okay, as long as if the no group wants to do it under the same terms and conditions, they can as well. Same goes for candidates. So, or the administrator of the building can say, we don't want any of that stuff going on our property. That's fine with us as well, as long as everyone's treated the same. And that's the equal access rule. Your municipal website, you can post activity to your municipal website. The analysis that's created, maybe if the school committee takes a vote on whether or not as a body you support the ballot question or you don't support it, that document can be put on the website. There can be a little button there. If I lived in Acton or Boxborough, I would, and I was a voter and I was like, man, I don't really know which way to vote. I need more information on this. I'm gonna actively go to your website and look for information. I'll probably be disappointed if I don't find anything. That's different from distributing unsolicited to the public. So please feel free to post information so long as it does not take on the appearance of a political campaign. It can be posted to the website. Please don't use government email to send information about ballot questions, unsolicited. Maybe you have all the emails for the parents in town. You wouldn't want to blast out an email saying, please vote yes on the override question. And robocalls, please don't use that for campaigning, but yes, a time, date, place notification is okay. This might frustrate you a little bit, but the Campaign Finance Office, OCPF, we say that that's okay, time, date, and place. However, the state's Ethics Commission, they're on the 6th floor of the 21-story building we're in. They're a totally separate agency. They have opinions on this as well. So if you do have a script that you want to send out, time, date, place on robocall, you send it to us. We say thumbs up. Please send it to Ethics as well. Get their opinion on whether or not this robocall, unsolicited to parents, is okay. I'm just going to hop back real quick. Any questions at this time about the use of public resources for campaign purposes? Yes.
Quick question. What happens if you're an appointed official in a different town, but an elected official in this town? So I hold an appointed position in a different municipality. Are there any circumstances, or is there anything that I need to be aware of in terms of advocating for or against a position?
Yes. In Massachusetts, an appointed and compensated public employee is prohibited from soliciting or receiving 24/7 nationwide at all times. In this scenario, you'd be prohibited, if that's the case, from soliciting or receiving for the ballot question or even for your own school committee campaign. You would have to have a committee on the side to do that fundraising for you. All right, a ballot question committee. These can be set up with your town clerks. A ballot question committee is a political committee, which is 2 or more individuals or entities that pool their resources to support or oppose a ballot question. It's a simple form. You're looking at it right now, the M101. It's a one-page form that's filed with the clerk saying, we are a political committee. We plan on raising money and spending money to support or oppose the ballot question. That 101 is filed with the clerk. A bank account is opened, and money can be raised. As candidates, you're very familiar with the limits and restrictions. When it comes to ballot questions, there are almost no restrictions. Corporate money can be taken. Let's say there are 2 corporations in your towns, and they say, you know what, we really want this to pass, and they join forces and they each give $10,000. They'd need to form a ballot question committee, report that to the public, and then disclose the expenditures. So these ballot question committees are formed. They can take as much money as they want. The key here is that they disclose their activity to the town clerks 8 days before the election and then 30 days afterward on the same form that you file as school committee members, the M102, showing all receipts, money coming in, and all expenditures, the money spent for the election. So the bottom line when it comes to these ballot question elections is people are going to want to do things. You're going to, after this talk, you probably feel like there are a lot of restrictions on what a school department can do, and there are. If there's any gray area where you think, wow, you know what, I don't know if this really passes the campaign finance law test, please feel free to contact us. Our general counsel, her name's Sarah, she would be happy to speak with you and give you an opinion on whatever it is you would like to do. So any questions at all as we conclude here?
Yeah, I have a couple questions, maybe some scenarios that I'm thinking of. You know, I think the equal access to public spaces, particularly like libraries, if a campaign wanted to, say, host an informational session in a public library, and the library has their standard use of facilities policies, and that group followed those, went there, and then provided information in support or opposed to the ballot question. A, would that be permissible? And then B, would the campaign to support the ballot question be allowed to invite the superintendent to come and present on the information that he's prepared in the course of his budget preparation duties around why, not why, but what may be the two outcomes depending on which way the ballot question goes?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So something like that would be allowed as long as equal access is granted and there's no fundraising. And the superintendent generally can be invited by a group even during the workday because it's within his scope of responsibility is the overall health and budget of the school department. He could go to an event, maybe the Lions Club or the American Legion or something. Maybe they're having a meeting and they want to invite the superintendent or the budget director. They could do that. Because it's a political committee, and it might be during the workday. If it's not during the workday, no problem for the superintendent to show up. But if it's during the workday, that may be viewed as campaign activity using public resources. So it depends on the specifics. I would ask that a public official ask our office with the specifics of that event, whether or not it would be okay during the workday to attend an event at the library or the senior center or whatever it is you choose.
Great. And my second question, I think, applies to not just the folks around this table, but some of our other elected officials who are here tonight. If we're in a public meeting like this and we're discussing the budget and the potential of the override, from what I understand, we're permitted to say, hey, from my position at the chair, at the head of the table, I support and encourage everybody to vote in favor of the override.
No problem.
Great. Well, then I do that right now, and I'll do that probably every meeting from now on.
Very good.
Great. Ben, and then I just want to give everybody in the audience the opportunity, because this is a training and a number of you this may affect as well. If you have any questions, I'll invite you if you wish to come forward. So go ahead, Ben.
Thank you, Adam. One last question. Do these same rules apply to public employees or appointed employees' spouses? So if my wife were to want to campaign or raise funding, she would be okay if she were to do it. I just can't go out and solicit funds, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Great. All right, one last round around the room fully. Any questions, comments? Jason, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you coming out. And yes, you are a great presenter for this, so keep up the great work.
I'll be back in 5 years, probably?
Yeah, probably. Let's hope not sooner.
All right, thank you.
All right. Next item on our agenda is yet another guest, and I will just give the quick intro and then maybe turn it over to Peter to provide a little bit more. So we have a representative from our audit firm of Powers and Sullivan to come and provide an audit report presentation for us. And I think that's Mr. Frank Serreti. Please feel free to come up. Peter, if you want to give any other additional intro.
Sure. So just while Frank is setting up, the school district is required to do an annual audit of all of the finances of the district, and so we've been working with Powers and Sullivan for a number of years. We haven't had an opportunity over the last few years to bring them in and present audit reports, but we thought this would be a good opportunity to get them up here, allow you to ask any questions you have about the audit reports and books, and just make sure that that's done publicly. I will turn it over. One just note on the agenda. We thought that all of 3 of the different documents of the audit report had been rolled into one when we posted it initially. We realized it wasn't, so we did update your agenda. There are actually 3 separate documents now on that agenda. There's a management letter, there's the report on the examination of basic financial statements, and then there's the RSD 23 CFA report. So all 3 are mentioned. In case he's referencing something that you didn't note, those are now posted and publicly available. And if anyone in the community does want to see audit reports, we have them dating back to, I think, FY 2016 or 17 on our school district website.
Okay, thank you very much for having me tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to present the results of the fiscal 2023 audit to you. I'm Frank Serreti. I'm a partner with Powers & Sullivan. I've been with Powers & Sullivan for about 28 years now, so I've been doing this for a little while. I'd like to start off by thanking the superintendent, the director of finance and operations, the district accountant, treasurer, the rest of the finance team for all the cooperation and assistance that we received during the course of the audit. There's a lot of information that we request, and it's a pretty good burden that we put on the team to try to get the audit done. And you know, we just get great cooperation from them, and that really, you know, makes the audit go really smoothly from our standpoint. We really appreciate that. The way we try to coordinate it, we do it in 2 different phases. We do preliminary work, which we were out in early April to do that work, and we're, you know, auditing the budget and debt and reviewing internal controls and testing transactions and just trying to get as much of a head start on the audit as we possibly can. And then we come back out in mid-August to do our wrap-up work, and so we wrap up any loose ends that we might have had, complete all of our year-end audit procedures at that time, and then we draft the reports that you should have in front of you. And we request that you know, we provide a list of the information that we request, you know, the majority of it, and we ask that it be provided to us, like through our secure portal, so that it's available to us before we start, and that really helps a lot. And the district has been very great about getting us, you know, everything we need so that we can really jump in and get through it fast and efficiently. And so the year-end work, like I said, was done in August 14th. We were able to issue draft reports by mid-September, and then the reports were finalized and out the door by October 10th. So from a timing standpoint, that says a lot about your team, that they're ready for the audit that soon after year-end, that we're able to come in, get the audit done, issue the drafts, and then finalize the audit that soon after year-end. I mean, we have some audits that are just starting now for FY23, and there are some that still aren't ready. So you can feel comfortable that your internal controls are being followed, that your books are being closed on a timely basis, that your accounts are being reconciled, and that things are being done well. I have to say that, you know, just from, you know, all the clients that I have, I know that I get calls all the time with questions, that your team is really concerned with trying to do things right and trying to get everything, you know, recorded the way it should be, and really want to do things right, and that's great to see. We really like working with clients like that. What I wanted to do was just go through some required communications with you first. That'll take about 5 minutes, and then I can jump in, give you some financial highlights, and then I can go through the report on federal awards and the management letter really quick. I'll try to make it as quick as I can for you. So as the auditors, we're responsible for planning and performing the audit to provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Management is responsible for the selection and use of appropriate accounting policies. You can find those accounting policies in Note 1 to the financial statements. There were no new accounting policies that were adopted during the year, and the application of existing policies was not changed. Accounting estimates are an integral part of the preparation of the financial statements. They're based on management's knowledge and experience about current and past events and assumptions about future events. The most sensitive estimates in the financial statements relate to the calculation of the net OPEB liability, the net pension liability, the compensated absences liability, and depreciation on fixed assets. We review the key assumptions and factors that go into those estimates, and we found them to be reasonable in relation to the financial statements as a whole. As far as difficulties being encountered while performing the audit, I'm happy to report that we did not We did not have any difficulties in dealing with management while performing the audit. Our professional standards define an audit adjustment as a proposed correction to the financial statements that may or may not have been detected except through our auditing procedures. And I'm happy to report that we did not have to propose any such adjustments, so your financial statements were accurate and they didn't require any adjustments on our end. And disagreements with management, our professional standards define a disagreement with management as a matter whether or not resolved to our satisfaction related to financial accounting, reporting, or auditing that could be significant to the financial statements or the auditor's report. And I'm pleased to report that there were no such disagreements with management. So that's kind of housekeeping. Those are required communications, a little technical. As far as financial highlights, general fund balance totaled $5.8 million at the end of the year. $777,000 of that is restricted for your capital stabilization fund. $2.1 million is assigned. Of that assigned fund balance, $762,000 relates to encumbrances, and that's money that's being carried over because there were commitments at year end, and that will be expended in fiscal '24. And another 1.4 is related to excess and deficiency that was voted to fund the FY24 budget. That left you with unassigned fund balance of $2.9 million. That's about 2.5% of your budget. And last year, just by comparison, was $3.1 million, so very close. That number, the unassigned fund balance, normally approximates your E&D, and your E&D is limited to 5% of your budget. Your E&D was certified at $2.8 million for FY23, and that money is available to be appropriated in FY24. And that was also under the 5% limit, which was $5.3 million. Operating results, or general fund operations, resulted in a $406,000 decrease in fund balance. And that was mainly due to the planned use of $1.5 million of excess and deficiency to fund the budget. That was offset by a revenue surplus of $954,000. Intergovernmental revenues came in over budget by $339,000. That was mainly due to Chapter 70 state aid and Medicaid reimbursements. Your investment income also came in $597,000 over budget, and that's mainly due to the advanced borrowing on the Douglas School, so you had some excess funds sitting there for part of the year, and also an increase in the returns on the investments, the rates. And then your expenditures came in under budget by $238,000. So what that indicates to us is that you have good, solid budgetary controls in place, that you're not overspending your budget, and that you're being conservative with your revenues. And then from there, the other post-employment benefits liability, I want to talk about that a little bit. The liability increased by $151,000, so not much, stayed pretty consistent, totaled $54.7 million at the end of the year. Discount rate increased slightly, didn't have a big impact on it, and you were about 15% funded in comparison with the prior year, which was about 13%, so you increased your funding level, which is great. The OPEB trust fund, you contributed another $789,000 to the trust. Your net position in the trust was $9.8 million, and net investment income was $717,000 in '23 in comparison with the net investment loss in '22 of $1.3 million. So the market recovered, and you had a much better year from that standpoint. Because you've put so much money aside and you have such a significant balance in there now, that has qualified you for almost what we consider to be a fully funded rate. So as you build up the balance in the trust, if you're a very low funding rate, you have to use like the AA municipal bond rate, which is about 4% now, and then your long-term expected rate of return is 6.22. You're at 5.92, so you're almost up to that fully funded long-term expected rate of return. And that has a really big impact on your liability. A 1% change in the discount rate can increase or decrease your net OPEB liability by about $8 to $10 million. And I have to say that you're one of the better funded school districts that I've seen, just in terms of how much money you've set aside for OPEB, so that's really great that you're making good progress in funding that. The net pension liability, you've got two two pension liabilities. One is with the Mass Teachers Retirement System, and that's for teachers and certain administrators that qualify to be in that system. And the nice thing about that is that's fully funded by the Commonwealth of Mass, and that's not a liability of the district. The liability that the Commonwealth has assumed related to the district is $155 million, and they paid about $12.9 million on behalf of the district for pensions during the year. And then the other retirement system is the Middlesex Contributory Retirement for anybody that doesn't qualify to get into the Mass Teacher system. That liability increased by $7.9 million during the year, in total $32.8 million. Middlesex is about 53% funded. In comparison with the previous year, was 61%. The main reason for that is that they're about a year behind with their investment returns, and they had a loss of $240 million. So that's the way the market is. It should be better next year, and that's what we've seen across the board and all the other retirement systems. So it's not unexpected. For long-term debt, you didn't issue any new debt this year. You've got $74 million outstanding, paid $3.7 million in debt principal payments, and you had no short-term debt outstanding at the end of the year. Fixed assets, you capitalized about another $24.3 million of fixed assets, and that's mainly related to the new Douglas Gates Elementary School. Speaking of that school, it's about a $117.3 million project. You've expended about $110.6 through the end of 6/30/23. You've got a $38 million capital grant from the Mass School Building Authority. You've received about $34.1 million on that, and it's a 49.7% reimbursement rate on eligible costs. And you had a receivable of $747,000 at the end of the year related to that project. So those are really the things that I wanted to highlight on the financial statements. And to just kind of summarize everything, we were able to issue an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That's the best you can get. It's a clean opinion. It means the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Reporting deadlines were met. The information that we received was accurate. No internal control deficiencies were noted, and all of our interactions were professional and courteous, which we always appreciate. For the single audit, I can go through this really quick. This is a compliance audit for communities that receive federal awards. For anyone, a community expending over $750,000 in a year, you have to undergo this single audit. The district expended $5.7 million in federal funds during the year, 1.3 related to the child nutrition program, 1.6 for special education, $954,000 for the American Rescue Plan Act, COVID-related funding, $786 for the Education Stabilization Fund, $843 for the Federal Emergency Management Relief, also for COVID, and another $300,000 for other federal funds. We had to audit the three COVID programs as major programs, and we had to do the compliance testing. And I'm happy to report on that we had no findings, we had no question costs, we noted no deficiencies in internal controls, and we were able to issue an unmodified opinion on compliance. So those are the best results that you can hope for on that. It's well managed by your finance team. And then the last thing was the management letter. It's critical in nature, doesn't highlight the things you do well, but what's important to note about it is that you have no significant deficiencies and you have no material weaknesses in internal controls. If you did, those are things that you want to be concerned about. These are more efficiency areas, for improvement, but nothing that's critical to your operations. There were 3 comments. One relates to the school store and just charging sales tax on non-apparel items. Management indicated that they were working to comply with that in 2024. Another related to adopting a cash and investment policy, and that's a best practice by the Government Finance Officers Association. It's also a required disclosure in your financial statements. You either have to disclose what your investment policy is or indicate that you have not formally adopted one. And so we recommend that all of our clients adopt a formal policy. So it's my understanding that a policy has been drafted, and that's going to be presented to the school committee for consideration. And then the last one relates to documentation of internal controls over federal awards in accordance with COSO. And that is one of the compliance requirements that's put out by the Office of Management and Budget and the uniform guidance related to the single audit that they want you to document your internal controls in accordance with COSO. The district has a draft document and is in the process of finalizing that and implementing that, and the goal is to have that done in 2024. And so that is everything. That's the report. From our standpoint, it went very well, and like I said, I think that the team here does a really great job trying to make sure that everything, the books are in great shape and that everything is being recorded, you know, the way it should be. And we find that the books and records are in really good shape when we come in to do the audit. And that soon after year end, that's really great to see.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Frank. Questions from the committee? All right. I will reiterate, and maybe it's Sherry who gets to answer this question, or maybe Frank, you can help, but Gary did have a question at the beginning, which was inside the audit report, there was a mention of a drop of assets by about 50%. I wonder if we can get some clarity on that.
A drop in what assets?
I'm looking to the gentleman who posed the question.
I only had one of the 3 documents to look at, but there was the net assets. Last year was 35 point something million. This year was 17 or 16 million. I think the note said it was for the Douglas Gates, but I just wanted to confirm that that was the reason.
I just want to make sure I know what you're referring to when you say net assets. There's net position, which is like fund to equity.
Yes, this line right here, 36 down to 17.
I think that that's probably the use of cash on, they
For the Douglas School.
borrowed on the Douglas Gates School and spent about 22 million of that cash.
So it was the funds that we had from the large borrowing to pay off the building, and then that we expended that through the course of last year as we were paying off the bills for that building. Great.
Locked in the good rates on the debt.
Yes, we did. Thank you to that budget, that bond committee that pulled the trigger on that. All right, one last pass around for questions or comments on the audit report. I want to thank you so much for coming, Frank. I really appreciate your comments on our finance committee and our finance department. I think I would agree with you. They're top-notch and really have everything in place for us. And now we're asking them to work double time as we face a difficult budget year. But thank you very much.
Okay, my pleasure. Have a great night.
You as well. All right, we are going to go back now to the superintendent's update from our opening part of the meeting. And so I'll hand it over to you, Peter, for an update.
All right, thanks, Adam. So congratulations to all of you. I don't know if you recognize this, but it is School Committee Recognition Month. So I just want to say thank you for all that you do. These are volunteer positions, and, you know, even if we raised your pay 100%, it wouldn't get close. So thank you for all you do. I also, as part of that, want to just also thank our students who volunteer for that work and come and represent our high school students as well, because they're also giving of their time, and I just want to include them in that recognition. I also want to recognize Jinho Austin Kim from the class of 2025. After a school-wide vote, he's going to be the ABRHS representative on Student Government Day this spring. Camilla, and I practiced this, so I'm sorry, Kalazda, 24, was voted as the alternate. So congratulations to both of those students. In terms of, you know, continuing to work through the budget process, we have had an opportunity to, you know, present to our staff a couple of different times and talk with them. And then Andrew and I divided up our staff and went and just sat in the schools at some different times, an opportunity to talk one-on-one with staff to hear kind of what they're thinking about in terms of the budget development, what their hopes are, what their concerns are. I've also now been working through a family feedback survey, and I will, you know, be very transparent. The analysis of that we will start sharing a little bit at our next meeting was done through ChatGPT. ChatGPT 4.0. I just do not have time to go through, 500 open-ended responses to 3 different questions and do that myself, and unfortunately, we cut the position that used to do that. So it was a ChatGPT analysis, but that is producing some good information to be able to consider, help us understand the questions that the community has around the school department budget. And then I've been following that up with parent focus groups, and we've been running those. I think I've now done 8 of them, and I have a few more to do, so I'm going to have an opportunity to talk to probably, 50 parents, 75 parents over the course of those groups, and just really kind of test some of the things that we thought came in the survey, hear from them about, what's critical to them, where they think maybe we have some opportunities to make some shifts in spending, and then also just what questions that do we need to make sure that we're responding to. So I definitely want to thank all the parents for doing that. I'm also hoping as we start to roll out the budget proposals to be able to do some student focus groups as well, and hear from some of the high school students in particular around what their hopes are in the budgets as we work from the time we roll it out to the time we refine it and then finalize it. So working through that process and trying to do a lot of engagement around it. Speaking of budget, we've decided to delay the kindergarten enrollment process that typically begins in mid-January. This delay is going to allow us to have more information about the budget situation that can then be incorporated into our presentations for families who attend kindergarten. Our current plan is to reschedule our kindergarten information session from January 16th to an evening in late February. We'd then be able to provide families more clarity about what the options are as they look to enroll once we know budget numbers a little bit clearer. We just felt like with what's not known right now in terms of what that A budget looks like in particular, it's awfully hard to give families firm decisions. We also have no information right now that we can share with them about kindergarten tuition or other things. And so we just need a little bit more certainty before we start sharing with families. So we'll be sending that out shortly as well. So that will go to families tomorrow so that they know what to expect. Migrant shelter update. We are up to 9 students. And, we are fortunate to welcome them into the schools. Right now, they are mostly at the elementary level. We do get reimbursement from the state for students on a per pupil basis. So we've been able to use that reimbursement to hire the family liaison, who's now going over to the shelter, meeting with families, being able to get into the schools, meet with students in schools, and really just be a good bridge back and forth. But that position was fully funded from the state money that came in for that. We have not hired any additional positions for that at this time based on enrollment. We know that there are still probably about 20 beds in the shelter that are unoccupied due to just some issues getting the rooms prepared. So we may see additional enrollments as we go through the spring here. But right now, we're at 9. I think we might be registering another student this week as well. So holding tight. We will be sending out information tomorrow. We have a cartwheel webinar coming up for families. It's one of those series of mental health webinars that we do. The title of the topic is When and How to Seek Mental Health Support for Your Kid or Teen. So we think that's going to be a popular one that is coming up next Wednesday, January 10th from 7 to 8 p.m. And we'll be sending out the Zoom link tomorrow. And then the last one, we have a community coffee with the superintendent and school committee chair scheduled for Wednesday, January 30th at 7 o'clock p.m. The focus is on the budget, FY25 budget. That is not a presentation, but just an opportunity to talk more with families about the budget process and what they're thinking about. So happy to answer any questions, and that's it for me tonight.
Wednesday, January 30th. Tuesday's the 30th?
We'll check that date.
I'm just making sure it's in my calendar, too. Leila.
I just wanted to ask about the folks who have come to the shelter. Was there a need for someone who speaks a language other than English, and is the coordinator bilingual if the need is there?
Just a clarifying question, Leila. When you're talking about the coordinator, are you talking about the coordinator at the shelter or the person that we hired, the family liaison?
The one we hired.
Yeah, so a couple of things. The family liaison who we hired, her name is Fania Alvarez, and she is fluent in Haitian Creole. Because we anticipated and we were told that a high probability is that many families would have that language. And that's actually borne true, although there's also a pretty healthy amount of primary language in Spanish and Portuguese as well. And so Fania has joined us as a sort of a 15 to 19 hours a week to start, and that's going pretty well. I think she shared this publicly at other sessions in Acton, but Fania herself has experience with going through the shelter system. And so that's just been a great asset for her to have an understanding and provide us with some education, but also she can connect with the families in a different and meaningful way. So that's who we've got. What was your first question?
I don't remember, but I feel
Yeah,
like
I don't
you've
remember it
answered
either, so I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
All right. Other questions for Peter? No? Thank you for the update, Peter. Okay, lining up for new business. I'll just make the note here that we're 30 minutes ahead of schedule, so thank you for that. School calendar, first read. So there is a school calendar in our packet that we can pull up and look at. Peter, any comments you want to provide for us on the calendar?
Sure. So, the next year's calendar is in the packet. The start date for staff would be scheduled for August 26th. So we would do staff on August 26th and 27th. And then our first day for students would be August 28th and 29th. This was one of those years where we would also plan the Friday before Labor Day would become a school day, which was in the new contract. We looked at some other iterations of it, but because of all the different days that we now have off in the school calendar, if we push that, we actually tried to do it a week later and maybe even start after Labor Day, but it put us right into that last week of June, and that didn't give us any room for error on snow days because by law we have to end by July 1st. So that would have been a particular challenge. The November does get broken up quite a bit. Actually, September, which is typically kind of a broken month, is fairly consistent. We have a couple of days off in October. November does get broken up a bit. We have to take the Tuesday, that first Tuesday in November, because it's election day and it's a national election. We cannot have school in session when that happens. We just don't have enough parking on campus. So that is a day off. That is when we do professional development for our staff. We had been doing that on the Friday right before the Veterans Day weekend and providing kind of that little bit of a break for people in the past, but we had to move away from that this year. The winter recess is a long one. And so, some particular feedback, we did ask a couple of area school districts if anyone went to school on the 23rd or 24th of December. And the only, most people did not do that. One person indicated they tried it once and got significant negative feedback about that. Just coming in for a day or a day and a half, it just didn't resonate. So the proposed calendar, we actually have off basically from the 23rd all the way up until the 2nd. So it's a very, very long winter break. It's almost the 2 full weeks, which happens, usually once every 5, 6, 7 years on a school calendar. One piece of feedback to consider, what we have found in the past is the day before we go away on that winter break is a pretty high non-attendance day. So we had started putting half days on that day just because we know a lot of people are traveling and getting out of town. We have that marked as a half day right now, and certainly that's, subject to your discretion. But we know that has seemed to work over the last few years. Last day of school right now is scheduled for the 18th of June. And so, that does mean that Juneteenth would fall on the next day. So if we have one snow day, that means we're back on the Friday, the 20th. And if we have 2 snow days, we're now into that next week. So just something to keep in mind. But happy to answer any other questions on this. Or if you want to mull it over, you can certainly send us, feedback via email, and we can incorporate.
Is it working now? Okay. As someone whose family celebrates Christmas, I'd be totally open to not doing the half day and going the 23rd and 24th. I could get more shopping in and have my kids out of my hair, so that sounds good to me. I do know that, some folks had emailed in and there was a concern about the number of days off and could we go back to the federal holiday schedule. And I really just want to speak to the importance to not unwind the work that has already been done. Only a portion of the student population celebrates the Christian holidays, which are what those federal holidays are. And it's just not fair to not represent so much of the other student population. So I just wanted to say that that is an important thing to maintain.
Do you have any concern about November 4th? Because as you look at this, we've got the Friday, and then we've got November 4th, then we've got the Tuesday. And I know I'm going to get yelled at by a lot of people if you send the kids back for one
Oh, you
day.
mean from a school calendar standpoint? Do I have
School
concerns
calendar.
about
Not
November 4th?
Not in general. The day is a lovely day. November 4th,
Yeah.
a lovely day. I keep it on my calendar every year. But in the case
Yeah.
of the school calendar, we've got Friday off, Saturday, Sunday off, Monday on, Tuesday off. Is that a problem when you think about attendance and people who may decide to take longer?
Probably, but I don't know how else to answer that. I think there will be some people who choose to take the time off. I think that the challenge is, Friday before that, we've committed to a no school day, and then we have the 4th, and then an election day. Because it's a federal election, we're stuck. And then we come back for 3 days, and then it's Veterans Day, which is a federal holiday. So it really makes a challenging beginning of November. But based on, the guidance that we have, we don't have too many other options.
I've also been asked by some parents out in the community, getting back into the swing of things this year has been particularly difficult. And the request is, can we set up a 2-hour delay on January 2nd to make it easier for the kids to acclimate?
No.
I would
Didn't
defer to
ask
the
you,
school
Adam.
committee on that.
Lakshmi?
So I haven't seen a school calendar in a while. This looks very different
Can
from
you
when
pull the
my
mic
kids
down
were
closer to
young.
your face? Thank you.
So I haven't seen a school calendar since my kids graduated from school. This looks very different from what I know. So my question is, who decides what days off?
We do.
So this list came from the school committees?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other, Yan Shin?
The elementary school half-days are still Wednesday, right?
Yes.
Other comments, questions?
Sorry. I have the context for the non-Christian holidays just because I was watching school committee meetings at that point. But I know someone emailed in about could we just take Good Friday off? Do we have context for how some of those non-required holidays, but that are religious, ended up on the calendar?
So, in other words, how did we end up with this number of days off?
I know there were some surveys, and that's how some of these other ones got added. And there was parent advocacy, but for the other ones before that, how are they decided?
So that would predate me and my time here. I think we had, you mean Good Friday and the 2 Jewish holidays, correct? Yeah. I think that's been a long-standing tradition. I think there was a period of time when the school committee went through a process to actually take those off the calendar. And there was a lot of feedback from the community that it was really important to recognize those dates in particular. And so when the committee looked at the calendar last time, recognizing that was a really important time to recognize the different families in the district, they also kind of had a lens of there's a lot more families too that I think, want to be seen and recognize that there's certain either cultural or religious observances that are very important, and they want to be with family on those days, so that's why we ended where we do.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Just a quick addition to that. I agree with Peter in that, at least I started in 2008, and since 2008, Good Friday and some of the observances for Jewish holidays had been in existence. There was some activity about debate, and when that happened, not only were families surveyed, but also staff were surveyed, just because staff do also have the ability in their contracts to take religious observance. And so they were surveyed for certain ones, would they more than likely request those off, because then we'd have to figure out if we could be fully staffed. And I do think that Good Friday had a fairly healthy number of staff who had indicated the possibility.
Just something that's a little bit minor. Are we sure that Good Friday is not required? Because the stock exchange is closed that day. So I feel like that is an actual federal holiday. No? Really? Okay.
So when do we review this list again? Here, a couple of concerns. One is there are a lot of holidays. I think I've mentioned, I hear a few others mention this. A lot of families, where both parents work, they don't get these days off. So that means they're taking the time off. That's a big concern. Before it was like, if it was a religious holiday, it was not mandatory for the kid to come in or take the exams. So that worked out well. The second one is, I do see that we added some religious holidays, and what guarantees us that we cover all the religious sentiments, and what if new groups come in? Are we going to keep adding that? And why do the school calendars have to accommodate and stretching the calendar or whatever, cut down the hours? I mean, when do we revisit this policy of adding, we seem to be trying to please different groups here. Our core business is to get the kids prepared for life, not worry about these, right? At some level, we want to acknowledge them, but we seem to have expanded a lot.
I would agree with you. And I think we went through a pretty deliberate process a couple of years ago, and there's nothing that precludes us from doing that again. What I would recommend is that if it's something that the committee wants to do, it's something that we need to start in advance of putting together a calendar, particularly if you're going to take something away from someone that they've had for decades or just a couple years. I think we need to go through a pretty prescribed process to do that. That being said, when we did it last time, one of the things that we recognized was that it was important to put those holidays on the calendar. Whether or not we took those days off, it was important to recognize them on our calendar. And then secondly, what we realized was many of them fall outside of traditional school days, and for lack of a better term, we sort of lucked out in a number of the years leading up to this year, where we didn't lose so many teaching days or learning days to those holidays. And I've asked the question of Peter and Julie, who put the calendar together, a couple times as we've gone through this, is this the worst it's going to be? What happens in 3, 4, 5 years? So that when we look at, do we need to reconsider this, is this, does it get worse than this? And I think, Peter, I'll let you correct me if I'm wrong, but when we looked at this and we looked the next few years out, by few I mean 3 or so, this was the worst case scenario. And more affected by the week and a half, 2 weeks of Christmas and Election Day than the religious holidays that were on the calendar. So I think I recognize your comment, Lakshmi, and I think we've seen other school districts in the Commonwealth say we're just not going to do any holidays. And that's a way to go. And yeah, we could both start a little later and a little sooner. But there was some pretty significant public outreach and outcry when we looked at removing Jewish holidays, when we weren't representing all of the other, cultural holidays and religious holidays that our community has. There's nothing that prevents a new group from coming into town and saying, but we want to support ours as well. And then we would look at that. There was a really, we took a long, hard look at what does it mean for us as a sort of government entity to be representing religious holidays in our operations. But what we felt was that what we have as a calendar today really spoke to sort of some of our key tenets around wellness and equity and engagement, and making sure that our community felt that they were represented in how we hold school and when we hold school. Yeah.
I just wanted to add to what Adam was saying, that also, it's really disruptive if like a large number of kids aren't there for a couple of days, a day or two, or staff, and then, there's a lot of work to catch people up. So it in some ways can be easier for everybody to just be out.
Okay, so what's the threshold is my question. So what is the threshold?
Yeah.
50% is clearly a threshold for me, right? So if 50% are going to be in the school, it makes sense. You grant that as a holiday.
It's a really hard question, because if you don't offer the day off, then there are going to be some communities who regard being present at school so important that they're willing to give up on their important religious holiday or religious belief so that they don't miss out on school. And that was some of the tension we had last time, which was, hey, we want to celebrate Diwali, but we really value the education that our kids are getting, and we don't want them to have to be in school during that time, or don't want to have them missing school during that time. And so we want them to have that space to be able to celebrate the same way some of the other members of the community. So it's hard if it's not there to measure what the absences would be. Was there a comment from over here?
Yeah, I just was going to ask, when was the last time we surveyed the community? I feel like it was only a couple of years ago.
3 or 4 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because you always have to think about it like Andrew just said, it's not just the students, it's the staff. And if we're in a position where we're going to have to hire or find all kinds of subs, and, that's not necessarily going to, be the same level of learning. So, I mean, we've been in this rodeo for many, many, many years, and we've looked at this from a lot of different angles, and we've had a ton of community input. So it's really not, if people come to it every year like, oh, I have this solved if we just do that. And let me tell you, we've tried to do that, and yeah.
I agree to that, but I was wondering, as a policy, do we have a number at which we make the decision? It is more objective rather than vocal groups kind of getting their way.
To my knowledge, there's no policy. Liz and then Ben.
So I know this is a little bit off topic. I don't know if yours was like a piggyback on that, Ben.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. I am not suggesting this in any way, so, I'm just devil's advocate throwing this out there. Is there any reason that would prohibit us from pushing the calendar forward a little bit to start the third week in August instead, to try and make sure that we, still have comfort level? And again, not suggesting it. August is really hot, we don't want to. I'm just saying, is that also an option?
I think that's a teacher's contractual issue around start date.
So in response to Lakshmi, one of the things that we need to be very cognizant of is not only the students, but the teachers. Now, I don't know what our threshold is in terms of substitute teachers, but if you have 2, 3, 4, or 5 teachers out in one school observing a particular holiday, then we as a school district have to scramble to fill those positions and make sure that we can get teachers back or substitutes back in those classes to address students' needs. I don't think it is really feasible, nor do I think it's really fair to the teachers to put them to scramble in order to get people back into classrooms. I know as a parent observing one of those holidays in the September months, I know from various members of my former congregation, there is at least 1 or 2 teachers that I know of who would not be there that day. So then we have to go out and find other teachers or substitutes to backfill those positions. And on such a widely attended day or days off, I don't think it is feasible, nor do I think it's really recommended that we push in that direction, because it's going to impact the students adversely either which way you look at it.
Thanks. All right, so I want to take this 2 ways. The first is I'm curious if there's a desire from the committee at the beginning of next school year to form a working group that would, yet again, look at our calendar and send out, do some community engagement and surveys to see where the community stands. That's my first question.
This is just the second year that we've had these things in the calendar, correct?
I think
this is just year number 2 of this.
Yeah.
I think that the subjective show of respect to the community that we live in, the cultures that are here, has an impact we haven't had a chance to see yet. And I think it's important for us to keep things as they are with this style of calendar, with this recognition of the people that are here. So I absolutely am against the idea of looking at this. We haven't had the time to understand the impact of it in the community, how we can bring it together. So
What's the right amount of time?
This is, as you say, the first year where something's happened, and we've only had, this is the prospected second year of it, right?
The calendar that we're looking at would be the third year of the additional
This
holidays.
is the first year we've had any kind of impact to it. I think you have to at least get through a couple more before you can start looking at it. You need the data if you're going to look at it objectively, but you need to have the response to understand it subjectively.
All right. So the reason I ask is because obviously we're struggling with this now. It's too late at this point to make those decisions, right? We can look at this a little bit, and whenever we make our decision, then we are resigned to get the feedback from the community that says, you're killing me by starting so late or ending so late or too many, that we all know that that's going to come to us into our inboxes. If we look at this now and say this is going to be a problem, we're going to get a lot of feedback. Should we start talking to the community next September to see if we're still on the right track? We have to decide that by the end of this year so we can put a group together at the beginning of next year. Or we say, no, we want to sit with this for yet another year, which means that now we're looking at the FY26 calendar with no choice to amend that either. That's my concern, is that we need to, so that the long-term question, and we don't have to answer that one today, but we have to answer it by the beginning or early next year, is do we want to look at this again? The short-term question is there any additional feedback that folks want to give right now with regards to next year's calendar? Knowing that we need to get this this will be on our agenda for next meeting to vote to then publish. Yanshin.
I have one question. I know Passover falls into the April vacation this year. So do we usually put a note, for all the days that we don't give off, but we recognize them on the calendar?
Not typically during school vacations.
The other thing is, what I hear from families the feedback was that, they appreciate to see all the different culture and religious holidays reflected in the calendar. Just childcare is what's killing people. So is it possible that we can think about, possibility having more programs through Community Ed on those days to help the families to address the childcare problem?
I can ask, I think the challenge would likely be that we have to staff our programs, and, we hire our staff based on what we can regularly staff. I'm not sure we could actually hire staff on one-off days, just for 3 or 4 days out of a whole school year. I think that could provide challenging. I'm happy to ask Erin to see what programming she might think of.
Great. Leela, and then Liz, and then we're out to the next topic.
I feel like I would be really interested in a group looking at how we do that, like how we provide additional support for families where there's only one parent and that's really hard, or 2 parents, or whatever, rather than revisiting the calendar. Like that's where I feel like my energy would be towards, but.
Okay. Liz?
Just piggybacking off of Yanshin's mention about Passover, would it be possible just to add that into the additional religious and cultural observances section? And we can even just put parentheses that it's during April vacation. I just want to make sure that's represented.
That's directed towards Peter, isn't it?
Okay. Sorry, I was making a note to email ComEd. Can you repeat that one more time?
I was just asking because Yanshin made a good note about Passover, and I was just wondering if we could list that down here with the religious holidays that are on non-school days, and even just put a parentheses. I just want to make sure it's represented. Or is Passover not one that we typically?
We have never listed that.
Oh, okay.
I think the challenge might be that there's a lot of different holidays in all of the different religions and cultures that come up, and I worry that if we just start listing things for the sake of listing them, then
No,
we're
yeah, that's
kind of going
fine.
down a
For
rabbit
some reason,
hole.
I thought that it was
Yeah.
part of that, but I was not part of the school committee that
Okay.
like added them all, so, sorry,
Yeah.
I retract.
Okay, no problem.
Right. All right, Lakshmi, quick, and then we're moving on.
Okay, so I don't want anybody to read into anything. I am not even looking at any specific. I don't have affinity to any holiday here. That said, I was wondering, is it possible for us to do a survey again from the community to see what hardships they have with this calendar?
It sounds
Not
like,
that just asking the folks who like it, but asking those who don't like it, I think.
yeah, it sounds like, and we'll come back to this, I think, in the latter half of the year. It sounds like what you're mentioning is similar to what Leela's mentioning, and there's probably something that needs to come up around the calendar. I think we'll get a lot of feedback as we go through and vote this, and so that will also inform that, so that maybe at the beginning of next year, there isn't a group that's going to look at changing the calendar, but there's going to be a group that looks at how do we support the broader community during all of those days when school's not in session. Wonderful. Thank you all. We are going to move on now to ongoing business. First item there is the school committee communication goal update. Okay, so the first one I have here is that we've received numerous pieces of feedback around our float to have February 3rd as a budget Saturday, and mostly because Gary asked me to, we are going to change it to February 10th. So I'm looking around the room. February 10th, which is Lunar New Year, will give us a little bit more time on the administration side to prepare. We'll make sure that we've got representation from both finance committees. We're looking at going from around 8:15 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon. Adding a budget Saturday was something that we removed a number of years ago, but considering the significant amount of considerations the committee will have to make with regards to the budget this year, we felt that we needed a good chunk of time. Jason's concerned about this date, but is there a Acton elected official conflict with that, or is it personal?
It's not an elected official thing, that's, at that point, we are getting dangerously close to March 27th, which is the date we have to go to ballot, go to print. Sooner is better than later, all things on this year.
Yes, agreed. And we did pull this, for those who are watching online, Jason was saying that March 27th was the date that we have to go to ballot. And so the sooner we can have this information available for everybody, the sooner we can prepare all of the collateral that needs to be provided with regards to the question.
I think we have a voted budget.
We will have a voted budget prior to that. A rough overview of the agenda for the February 10th meeting is to really go through all of the different options or areas where the school district is looking at creating cuts to be able to meet our B budget, which is the budget should an override not pass, but also to provide the committee and the other elected officials from the finance and select boards with some deeper information about some of the other cost centers, areas like transportation, special education. We've got a number of those that we're going to provide some presentations on as well, just so that there's a real sort of open dialogue about where the money is going, so that people are aware of that and what may happen and what our options are with regards to what cuts may need to be made as we get to both our recommended budget and then our B budget should an override not pass. So I'm asking everybody now, pencil in February 10th, 8:15 a.m. to 3:30. We'll do something for lunch, and I'll send an email out to both towns' finance committees and select boards. Saltines and water is apparently what we have in the budget for lunch. Okay. And we have confirmed, thank you very much to ActonTV, they will be able to be here to record and broadcast the workshop as well. So that's the first item of business on that. Second was, at our last meeting, we discussed trying to set up some school committee office hours And thanks to Yanshin and Vikram, who've done some research on that, we're able to get time in both the libraries and the town halls. And so what I've asked Yanshin and Vikram to do is to start to book some times and create a sign-up sheet. Starting beginning of February, I think, you know, we need to get some more information before we can sit and talk to folks about things. So starting February 1st, running basically till the end of March, Yanshin's going to help create the sign-up sheet, and she and Vikram are going to start to book some times at those spaces, and also try to have them overlap with when there are other community events happening there. So, you know, book reading times and other things. We're going to work with the librarians to set those up then. And then once that's set up, Yanshin, once you have those dates and once you've got a sign-up sheet, we'll share that with the committee, and that we'll look for everyone to sign up for as many sessions as possible so we can get some good sort of office hours. The other thing that we had looked at was doing some outreach to the local seniors. And Becca and Lakshmi, I think you guys said that now that the new year is ticked over, you're going to start to reach out. Same thing applies. I'm not expecting the two of you to do all of that. Find out when those senior groups are meeting, and we can append the sign-up sheet and just, again, have one place where school committee members can see where events are happening, go, show your face, help answer questions, help, now we've learned, help advocate. As long as you're not asking for funds, you can advocate. And then, you know, broadly, I want to put it out here, and I want to sort of mention to the rest of the committee, if there are other community events that are happening, Lions Club meetings, Kiwanis, whomever's having a meeting, if you know about it, if we can get an invitation, happy to go, again, and talk to whomever and talk to everybody about what's going on, where we're at. And to help support that, we did ask Andrew to start working on an FAQ and sort of a you know, where are we at type of document. Andrew, you want to give us an update on that?
Real briefly, we're working on compiling the data and curating questions from the community and various social media sites. Tori's done a phenomenal job of doing some work around data and data visualization. The questions will be answered through consultation with Peter and the district, and we'll be able to make these available to the committee for review by our next meeting. So I'll have a list of things together to show next time.
Awesome, thank you. And then I'll point everybody to the budget webpage that Peter, I'm not even going to say the district because it's Peter, webmaster extraordinaire, has put together, starting to put up some short explainer videos. We'll probably host that FAQ at that website as well. And so that's a really great place for all of us to go to when someone asks us a question. And then one of the things that we're hoping to do is, as you're starting to field questions from the community, do send them to us so that we can update that FAQ document so that it's sort of live, always sort of getting the latest sort of buzz questions from the community and what the facts are around those misconceptions or what's happening. I will squash one misconception right now. The committee has asked for the closure of a school to be presented to us as an option. No decisions have been made around closing any schools in the district. There have been some, things going around on multiple community discussion groups that a school has been decided to be closed and this is how it's going to happen, or the school won't be closed and this is why. None of that exists yet. Everybody who's sitting around this table needs to have all that information presented to them first, and then we will have a very open and public conversation and deliberation about how we get to the budget numbers we need to get to, and should the closure of a school or a school building be part of that. So please make sure that you correct any of those types of questions or comments that you hear out in the community, and I'll share that with our audience as well. No decisions have been made on that. We have asked for that to be evaluated, as it should be, but we haven't even begun the evaluation at the committee level. Any other updates that folks want to give with regards to school committee communication and outreach to the community? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the high school course leveling vote. Peter, do you want to give us just a quick reminder of where we're at and what we're about to do?
Sure. So back in November, we presented the high school's course leveling plan to the school committee. The materials in your packet are largely the same as what was presented previously. There were no changes to the plan that the administration has put together. However, there is an updated memo from Principal Dean in the packet that I asked her to do just to talk about, the impact of budgetary constraints on how they might proceed with this plan. I think, and I had said this in my initial communication back in November, but we know we're presenting two different budgets. Right now, the A budget that we'll be presenting next week reduces the overall budget of the district by about $2 million. But in terms of impact on actual teaching staff, that's still not, at a level that we have to really go into the teaching staff at that point. And so she feels like at the level we're presenting, we can proceed with that plan. I think as we go any deeper than that, there's going to be some tipping point that she's going to have to evaluate where they might have to say we're either pausing the plan or we're stepping back from something. And so I think the vote that we're requesting is the vote to implement that with the timeline as determined by the administration. And they're just going to have to be responsive to the resources that they have. We don't want to put anyone, our teachers, our families, and most importantly, our students in a bad position by under-resourcing an important initiative. And so, it's going to be flexible with what happens with the budget.
Thanks, Peter. Any questions or comments on that? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the high school course leveling plan as presented to be included in the school's program of studies and implemented by the administration as budgets permit.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so that was Ben and then Tori. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, that has passed. Next up is a health insurance update.
Can I just give a real quick thanks to,
yes, please,
Principal Dean and all of the high school staff who have been working on this for the better part of a couple of years. This has been a tremendous undertaking. They've been very thoughtful. They've gotten community feedback around it. They've gotten student feedback to help inform the plan. And this has been a lot of work on their part, so I just want to make sure I thank them for all of the work on that. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, guys. All right, next up then is a health insurance update. So we've got two items under this topic. The first is a memorandum of understanding with the Acton Health Insurance Trust and the town of Acton. Peter, do you want to give us a quick overview on that, please?
Sure. So there is a memo in your packet from me with kind of three topics. One, on December 12th, we did convene the health insurance working group. This had been done a number of years ago, but we chose to reconvene this group, to work with all of the employee unions on this town and school side around, modifications to current health insurance plans. We're looking at a couple of different options for that. One is looking at a process within the Acton Health Insurance Trust to modify plan design in order to bring costs down for both the district and employees. But the other option that we're looking at would have to, really be thoughtful about whether or not the Health Insurance Trust continues to be the right mechanism as we look into the future of health insurance for our employees, or should we be joining a larger group or joint purchasing group that has a much larger risk pool so that we don't end up experiencing this type of fluctuation and risk again. So we're looking at both options simultaneously. The consultant that we're using, Gallagher, has sent all of our claims information out to multiple groups now. We anticipate getting some information back I think in end of January. We should have that information back, and we're going to be going over that. The GIC is the largest state-run insurer, which could have some financial advantage to joining that we are interested in at least learning more about. The deadline for joining GIC on July 1st was December 1st. You would have had to have notified them. We hadn't made enough progress with the Health Insurance Trust work to get to that as of that point. However, I have reached out to and spoken with both Senator Eldridge and Representative Cataldo about anything that the legislature might do to reopen the eligibility period, knowing that the issues that we're facing are not ours alone, but they're also impacting other communities in the region. So, we're really trying to work all angles of what might be available to us, just so we keep as many options open as possible.
So do you want to give us, Peter, an overview of the MOU? Because we have to vote to authorize you to sign that.
Sure. One of the things that I spoke with Town Manager John Mangiaretti about was just a desire to memorialize that the district and town had entered into a loan agreement for the $2 million. And just to make sure that we were spelling out clearly that this was a loan with the intent to be repaid, that there was a breakdown that we had agreed to up front, so that when we repay the loan, it's coming back in that. And also, present terms, should one of the parties, pull out, or if the trust were to dissolve, because we know any of those could be a reality. So this was prepared by the attorneys, and we're presenting it to you for your approval tonight. It's really just to memorialize all the terms of how we went about the loan.
Thanks. Any questions or comments on that? Leela?
It's not substantive at all, but just a small note. In the second paragraph of the MOA, I think we're missing a couple words. It says, where's the Acton, but I think it's supposed to say the town of Acton. That's it.
Yeah, second paragraph, whereas we think it needs to be.
Acton, the town. Maybe Ginny, would you find that substantive? I defer to you. Okay.
Should say the town of Acton here, correct?
All right, so Becca.
I just wanted to ask if, if we do choose to leave for a better option and thereby end up having to forfeit the, $500,000 that we loaned, since, given that HIT hasn't laid out a timeline for repayment, are we factoring that in to the cost of moving?
I think that's something certainly we're going to have to consider, and anything we choose to do has to weigh, short and long-term benefits and drawbacks. I think, one of the things I've been thinking about, and it's still a pretty early thought, but, we've loaned this money to HIT, and they have the cash flow now, plus the rate increase to be able to manage for a period of time. If we choose to leave, there's going to be probably about a 6-month run-out period on claims after we choose to leave. Based on the cash flow that they have, one option I think we should consider is using that loan period to pay off claims so that it sits with the trust. I think there's a lot to be known about the cash flow of the trust before we can think of any of that, but that's just an early thought of how we might manage some of that.
Okay, so with that, I will entertain a motion to authorize the superintendent to sign the memorandum of agreement.
So moved and seconded.
All right, so Ginny made the motion and Andrew seconded. All of those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is unanimous. Thank you. Peter, you want to give us a quick overview of the engagement letter with Russell Dupree?
Sure. Health insurance for us is, a multi-million-dollar venture. And as we have gone through this process and we've seen HIT have a really high level of risk, one of the things I've been thinking about is in any event that we have around modifications to the trust, or in the event, we have to dissolve the trust or someone leaves the trust, it's really important to me that the district is protected in that process. Our current attorneys at Stoneman Chandler don't do this work. Typically, when we do municipal law, we go to Anderson Krieger. However, Anderson Krieger also represents the town of Acton, so they couldn't represent both of us in any matter related to the trust. We're a member of Case Collaborative. Case Collaborative's trust is also dissolving, and their attorney is someone that they've worked with for years, and so as a board member, I've been able to interact with him over that period of time. He has worked on trusts that have dissolved. He's worked on trusts where people have left, and he's pretty familiar with all of those processes. So what I wanted to do was just have someone basically on a retainer that if we need some consulting time with an attorney or to review a document or to advise us about a process, we have someone who there's an agreement with that we can get services from quickly. So that's really what we're asking you to do. He's been in this industry for a good number of years, mostly focusing on education, but he does have experience in the healthcare and health trust aspect of that. So That would be the request.
Thank you. How do you pronounce his last name?
DePere.
DePere. All right. Any questions or comments? So then I'm looking for a motion to authorize the school committee chair to sign the engagement letter with Russell DuPere Law Offices, PC.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, that was Leela and Ben. Thank you. All of those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is unanimous. Thank you. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Liz to take us through the student use of electronic communication devices policy, second read.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much. So the policy subcommittee, we have met. We took the feedback that we received from the public and from the school committee. So we heard the feedback about sort of making sure that we explain the why, and making it clear that this is a policy that is, sort of a guideline for the schools themselves to have their own procedures in place. We also made sure to add the prelude with the Surgeon General's warning to sort of highlight the health benefits that we are looking to be protecting for our students. And we did add the links to the actual handbooks for each different grade level.
Thank you. Questions, comments on this? Andrew.
Thanks. I appreciate the addition of that stuff, especially the stuff with the handbooks. I think policy over prohibition is really important. I'm absolutely in favor of a policy that governs and manages these devices, but I'm against any policy that would prohibit them. And I think the policy right now that you have inside of this of don't use this during class or at times when you need to focus is great. Currently, however, our elementary schools have a prohibition on students wearing smartwatches and demand that any other electronic device be turned off and placed in a different location. And in the case of something terrible happening in our schools, a bomb threat, a building collapse, a lockdown, active shooter, a fire, or some other inconceivable act, our students will be left without a method of contact. Just today, in Iowa, a high school student walked into a school with a gun and opened fire at their school. As they were walking in, calls started coming into the police. And within 7 minutes, emergency responders were available and there. They saved lives. The calls came in because the callers had the technology with them to make those calls. And as the confusion reigned, the families could text or call their family, their kids, their students to know what was going on and find clarity. And we could say that there are gather points or that there are ways to collect students as these kinds of catastrophes occur, but we'd be saying that at the same time that we'd be removing a potentially life-saving tool, policy over prohibition. So I support the policy that's written today, but I'm vehemently opposed to the tack that our schools are taking in prohibiting students from having the technology within arm's reach. And I just think that the elementary schools have been making a mistake with this, and I needed to make sure that it was said.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Hi. So when I click on the links, it just brings you to the whole student handbook without showing you where to look in that handbook. And I struggled to find the place in that very lengthy handbook.
Are you specifically referring to the high school handbook? Or are you,
Yes.
okay, because I noticed that as well.
Yeah.
This had already been out and we discussed it this morning, and Andrew said that it was okay because we do have, it is section 3 under, we discussed it this morning. I put it in red, I saw it to have the same, so if you go down to section 3, there is a section, I of course can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's something to the effect of under student expectations.
Okay. So we probably want to just add that to the draft.
Correct, that is
Yeah.
the, yep, so
Okay.
that is the plan, but this had to already be sent
Okay.
out before our, meeting
Yep.
that we had this morning.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'll add that it also was the elementary school one, and I had to scroll and scroll because I didn't know what section it was supposed to be in. So if you're doing it for the high school, I would just suggest also for the elementary school handbook. And I guess junior high too, I didn't look at that one.
I thought it was in there for the elementary and the junior high, but we'll make sure that we.
It just goes to like the top of the
No, so it wouldn't jump,
handbook.
it wouldn't jump to the section because that's not necessarily something we have, but like we specify next to the link what section to go to. So it's still going to bring you to the handbook, but it will say, please see section 3, under this heading.
Yeah, I don't think it did, at least when I looked. It was just general, and I was scrolling and looking.
I think if I understand, Liz, what you're saying is there's going to be addition to the policy document that says, after the link, scroll to this section of the document. Peter?
Can I just, it's school committee policy, but I'd just like to offer maybe a contrary opinion on that. Handbooks get reorganized on a regular basis, and if you codify in policy exactly where in a handbook something's going to be located, every time a handbook changes, you're going to have to also revote a policy. And I think that's going to be prohibitive to just efficient operation, whereas if we just link the handbook, control find works well, and just cell phone or something like that, and I think that would cover it. But as I said, I want to offer that. I think it would possibly slow the process down.
I second Peter.
All right, so I guess I have two questions. One is, are we happy with the policy exactly how it's written, or do we wish to add some more clarifying language in the policy that points people to the correct place in the handbooks? I'm not seeing, yeah?
I think there needs to be, I appreciate what Peter's saying. Maybe there could be a procedure section after this that could be updated more quickly, or just some way, because it's an overwhelmingly lengthy handbook, and I think that it's not fair to say to parents, here's the link to the handbook, with no further. I looked for it and I couldn't find it, so I'm probably a little more familiar with this handbook than most people. And was unable to locate it, so for what it's worth.
All right, so Ginny makes a really great point, which is we can add procedure, which is not something that the school committee has to vote on, and my suggestion would be that there's a procedure document with this that indicates that there should be clear language or a clear location in the table of contents that indicates cell phone policy. If I looked at the elementary one, there's a easy to click on hot link that takes you to cell phone policy. In the high school one, it's covered under the general behavioral expectations, and it's a little bit harder to find. So what I'm getting the sense is that the committee is asking the administration to create a procedure about how to quickly find this information as part of the policy. Call Peter is what Andrew just said. He's not allowed to have his cell phone at work. Okay. So then what I'm hearing is there's an interest to move this policy and vote this policy as presented exactly here. Leela.
Would it be exactly, or would we be removing, the specific sections that have been referenced?
No, what's referenced here is a link to the handbook. Full stop. And it just takes you to the handbook page,
right,
which was feedback from the last time, which says you need to take us to the handbook. We need to know where to find this information. And then the addition is a procedure that says, dear administrator, as you create your handbook, please make sure that your table of contents clearly indicates where their where your cell phone requirements are, so that when someone clicks on this link and they scroll to the table of contents, they can find the specific information around cell phone policy.
I understand that, but right now in the policy, we have language directing you to where to find it, and if those headers change, then I think to Peter's point, it might get confusing. So if we take out Appendix A of the RJ Gray handbook and instead do what we're talking about, I just don't, can we approve the policy with those
the actual
things?
bullet points that aren't hot links, but the actual black text that I was ignoring?
Can I make a recommendation?
Please.
That right above where it actually lists the 3 links to handbooks, that you actually just take out that section, and it can say each school's policy governing student use of electronic communication devices can be found in their respective handbook. The school committee has directed the district to develop a procedure which provides, families easy access to the specific sections of handbooks where these can be found. And then the links actually sit in the procedure too, so that as links change, we can update those too. And we're not coming back to you for links.
I'm seeing consensus. So is everybody comfortable enough with that to be able to vote the policy as it has been amended basically by Peter? Great. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the student use of electronic communication devices policy.
So moved.
Second.
That was Tori and then Liz. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Also unanimous. Thank you all very much. Andrew's happy about it too, apparently. Okay, we're going to move on to subcommittee and member reports. So that was his cell phone, right? Into the rubbish bin. So I'm going to ask everybody to jump into their Wayback Machine and remember the last time they met with their subcommittee. And we'll start down here with Ben and the Capital Subcommittee, which apparently met last on December 13th.
Correct. The Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee's Capital Improvement Subcommittee met on December the 13th at 7:30 in the morning. I called the meeting to order at 7:30, and then 4 minutes later turned it over to Yanchin as I got pulled into another meeting. But through the courtesy of Liz's notes, the minutes from the previous meeting were unanimously approved with minor corrections. A discussion covered various topics, starting with the completion of the recent asphalt repairs. An update on the Parker Damon building project was provided, including the installation of a temporary computer system at the cost of $89,400. This was considered a proactive step following the Bureau Veritas report highlighting the need for a control replacement. The heating system updates for the junior high school administration buildings and potential issues with the winter weather and leaks in the various school roofs were discussed. The district-wide phone system update is nearing completion, and it looks like it's completed. Is that correct? Fantastic. Moving on, looking forward to the FY25 priorities, considerations for budget adjustments and potential overrides were noted. The focus on addressing items identified in the Bureau Veritas reports, such as the administration roof building, or administration building roof replacement, rooftop units up on the high school building, and the asphalt replacement for the Conant and Blanchard schools were discussed. The discussion also touched upon the potential repairs of the tennis courts and fundraising and revenue-generating ideas that were explored, including a cell phone tower, the expanding of solar power usage, and so on. Estimates for the tennis court were requested for further consideration. The meeting concluded with a discussion on the meeting schedule, including the possibility of a January meeting for fundraising presentations. The next meeting is scheduled on March 17th, with an update to follow on the capital improvement plan from Mark Hamill. Meeting adjourned at 8:27 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. All right, next, Policy Subcommittee has 2 meetings, one from the 14th and one from today.
Yes, the policy subcommittee met on both December 14th and again on January 4th. Both primary objectives for the meetings centered around the cell phone policy, which we just voted tonight. We are planning to meet again on January 25th at 7:30 a.m. via Zoom to discuss the adoption of the cash and investment policy, and also to discuss the resource force's suggestion of a resolution regarding reducing the district's carbon footprint.
Great, thank you. Joint PTSO, Lakshmi.
Okay, I think the date is incorrect there. It's December 4th. PTSO meets every first Monday of the month at 7 p.m. via Zoom. And the December 14th was a third meeting. That meant that meeting was dedicated to mostly covering, bringing the PTSOs up to speed on the budgetary concerns we have, and Peter had the presentation. They were absorbing the numbers and the information in the presentation. There was a Q&A, and I think there were a few parents who seemed to have moved past that, but I think we probably need to have a longer session, which is probably Monday we can cover, where we can answer more questions when they come up, when they have. And I was wondering if the community outreach school committee members would be willing to come that day and answer any questions from the PTSO members. I can forward the invitation.
So that's next Monday?
Yes, it's on January 8th at 7 p.m.
And so if anyone's interested in joining or participating in that joint PTSO, help to both field questions and hear what the PTSOs are concerned about, reach out to Lakshmi and we'll make sure that we get you. I think that's a Zoom meeting, yeah?
Yes, it's a Zoom meeting.
Yes, it
and
is.
I will
We'll
forward.
make sure that we get you the link for anybody who's interested in joining that. Thank you. Budget sub, Rebecca.
The Budget Subcommittee last met on December 15th at 7:30 a.m. on Zoom, an unusual meeting time for us, but we wanted to ensure that the subcommittee members were properly informed before the following ALG meeting, understanding that an override number was going to be proposed by the Finance Committee. We discussed the ongoing work to create 2 budget proposals, one in case of an override, one without, as well as how potential cuts might impact the district. We also discussed helping the community fully understand why the deficit exists and ensure everyone sees how the funding model is problematic. Leaving local taxes to cover the bulk of the cost of education leads to issues, like when a pandemic impacts health insurance. This is affecting many other districts as well. We are all proud of our schools, the true heart of our shared community, and want to see them fully funded so all students flourish. It is with this in mind that we continue our work. We meet again on Monday, January 8th at 3:30 p.m. on Zoom, and we'll continue to work on the budget proposals and discuss override numbers. We are committed to financial integrity and transparency, so please continue to reach out with any questions or comments because it's an all-hands-on-deck situation and we need the community's support. Thank you.
Thank you. And do you or Tori want to give the update from ALG from the 18th of December?
I prepared one. Do you have one too?
I don't have one prepared, but
I do like to write ahead. ALG met on December 18th at 7:30 a.m. at the Town Hall and discussed the multi-year ALG model and potential override. The Finance Committee offered a number to get negotiations started, but it was lower than this committee can support. The district cannot absorb more than $2 million in cuts without real devastating consequences for student learning. If we want to maintain the excellence of our regional district and meet student needs, we need proper funding. This is not a position of nice-to-haves. It is a position of moral and legal responsibility to our students. ALG meets again on Monday, January 8th at 7:30 a.m. at the Town Hall, where we will continue the discussion around an override. I encourage everyone listening to get involved and reach out with any questions or comments. It's vital that all stakeholders are heard and involved in this process because we're all in this together.
Thank you. All right, lastly, Health Insurance Trust. Andrew, you guys met today, yeah?
We met this morning. Health Insurance Trust met this morning. Documents are on the Trust's DocuShare location as part of the actonmass.gov site. Our consultant provided a review of the current financial report and reiterated the known issues of higher than expected costs. Rebates, however, are coming in for prescriptions over this quarter and should result in approximately $316,000. The budget deficit remains of $2.1 million. The shifting to Aetna for MedX will result in cost savings starting this month as we start transferring over for that, and additional rebates will come each quarter. The Health Insurance Working Group, as Peter mentioned, recently met with representatives from the town, the district, and unions to discuss the situation and work together on potential changes to health insurance delivery where there will be a change to the health insurance provider. Our consultant is preparing analysis for multiple alternative plans and providers to allow us to better understand the path forward towards cost savings and providing services to those who receive health insurance. We expect to review that at our next meeting on January 25th.
Thank you very much. All right, any other updates that we missed or questions or comments on any of the updates? Wonderful. We're going to move on to our consent agenda. So items on the consent agenda do not usually require discussion and are approved with one vote unless any member would like to have an item held. If you do, say hold as I read through the items. Item number 1, ABR PTSO $1,500 donation to the ABRHS Community Service Program. Item 2, Mark Lawrence Photography, $2,767 commission check to the RJ Gray Junior High Student Activities. And item 3, basketball uniform donation of $1,699.60 to RJ Gray. Seeing that nothing was held, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we'll give that to Ben as the mover and Tori as the finisher, seconder. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? That is unanimous. Thank you. Hoping someone has the statement of warrants and recommendation to approve open on their computer to read it. Liz has got the not it finger.
All right. I move that the school committee vote to approve the below-listed warrants totaling $13,022,629.97. AP vendor warrants as follows: 24-012A dated 12/7/2023 in the amount of $340,210.49. 24-012B dated 12/14/2023 in the amount of $1,857,443.17. 24-013A dated 12/21/2023 in the amount of $206,492.99. 24-013B dated 12/28/2023 in the amount of $2,665,600.67. Payroll vendor warrants as follows: 24-012PR dated 12/14/2023 in the amount of $602,050.43. 23-013PR dated 12/28/2023 in the amount of $1,241,976.69. Payroll warrants as follows: P2412 dated 12/14/2023 in the amount of $3,070,017.47. P2413 dated 12/28/2023 in the amount of $3,038,838.06.
Second.
That was seconded by Tori. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? That is unanimous. Thank you. Peter, anything in the FYI that you want to update folks on before we close out?
Yeah, so just an update, I know that last spring we had voted to submit a statement of interest to MSBA for Conant. They had actually gotten to a point where they came out and visited the Conant Elementary School, but we were not subsequently moved forward in that process. So the notification of that is in the packet, and then we have our monthly student enrollment reports.
Thank you. All right. We have need for an executive session to be convened under MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Purpose 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Would someone like to move to go to executive session?
So moved. Second.
Okay, so that was Tori and then Leela, and we are going to do a roll call vote to move to executive session. Leela?
Aye. Yes.
Tori? Ginny? Yes. Liz?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Becca?
Yes.
Genshin?
Aye.
Andrew? Lakshmi?
Yes.
And Ben?
Yes.
Thank you. The school committee will not return to open session tonight, so thank you all for joining.